Hello and welcome back to Processing the Process, where we capture and discuss the technical, psychological, and contextual dynamics that shape the process of creating a work of art. Week by week, moment by moment, we're following Allie K. Dacres, teacher, actor, director, and producer, as she shapes the development of her innovative middle school drama club and guides her students' idiosyncratic artistic journeys. Today, we'll be focusing on both the March 27th meeting and the April 1st, what I'll call the extra meeting. So beginning with March 27th, well, it happened to be World Theater Day. So, hey,
yay!
We thought that might bode well for the day, but we do know, of course, that Allie is constantly grappling with limited time. So I know, Allie, it was a bit difficult for you thinking about the beginning of this meeting, knowing she was going to have to spend time discussing showcase scheduling with the kids rather than being able to use that time to devote to playwriting. So what can you do? The scheduling conversation was called the show calendar review and really outlined rehearsal dates and times. The most prominent, of course, being that in April and early May, the Wednesday meetings will now run from 3 to 5. And for tech rehearsals, the rehearsals will run from 3 to 6 for that tech week. So Allie, along with the actual information you were imparting, you had a very important message that you needed to communicate at this time. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Now is the time to think about whether or not you are able to fully commit moving forward. If they're going to be actually ready for performance, and it is kind of interesting. What exactly does that mean? Ready. Right? Yep. So we had been talking about that, like how will these kids know when they're ready? What does that really mean?
Right.
What kind of preparation does that actually require?
Right.
To me and to them, I impart to them, ready means prepared and confident. Those two things have to be there. Now, if a kid is experienced, maybe they can wing it a little bit, but I never want my kids to just wing it. So even the experienced kids, they may not be able to be at as many of the long-term, the extended rehearsals that we might have, or maybe they're joining us after their sports or whatever commitment they might have prior meeting us, but I can trust them a little bit more in terms of they've been through it, so they know what it takes. It's the younger ones,
right,
who may not know what that means. Yeah, it's
Sure.
pretty tricky. So what does this look like? What does it mean? They're not off book, don't know their lines, right? They don't have their costume and prop items by the time that they're supposed to have them. We do have deadlines for these things. They're a little loose, it depends. You tell a kid, I need this hat, 3 weeks in advance, because it's going to take them that long potentially to actually have everything in. But with these cushion deadlines, it's like if it's like tech week and they're like, oh, I need a hat. It's like, yeah, where you been? That kind of a thing. It's whether or not they know the flow of the show. They know when their scene is, if they're in multiple scenes, what the order of that is, the entire construct of the arc of the showcase itself. If they don't know these things by the back of their hand, by the time we open, we're in a lot of trouble. It's tricky, If they know that they're not going to be able to make it to half the tech rehearsals, now we're up in the ante. So maybe a kid might be able to just be missing these extended ones, but they're communicating, they're keeping in touch with me. I'm talking with mom, dad, etc. at home about what they're going to need, and maybe everybody's working together to kind of get the kid where he or she where they need to be. Right? But now we're taking it up a notch where someone is like, yeah, I want to do the showcase, but I'm going to miss half the text. It's like, well, that's a different story. Because it's not just you preparing for yourself and making sure you're ready and confident, and that, even within the context of just your scene being ready and confident, now we're really talking about the entire production. It's a huge piece of the puzzle to miss these tech rehearsals. This is, we're literally putting the puzzle together.
Yes.
We might have had scenes that have never been rehearsed the same day as something else, potentially, not likely. We more likely will have had runs of the order somewhere. You know, if we don't have the stage, we would have done it somewhere, in the gym, outside, wherever we could find the space. You know, but it's unlikely that we'd have all the elements in place. We know we're not going to have the lights. We know we're not going to have our sound cues intact. We know we're not going to have all these elements that the kids themselves are running. So if you're missing this aspect, this time frame of when we're deciding who's going to bring out chair number 1 and who's going to be ready, you know, to help so-and-so get dressed or whatever, if you're not there for that, how are you going to successfully participate? So you have to really start to ask yourself, am I going to stick around for the long haul if these are really, you know, truly the time that I can be there, or this is the type of time and the process that I'm missing. So yeah, it's something a kid needs to kind of think about, gain perspective on, and that happens through conversation. It happens through me asking them, how do they feel about it? You know, are they frightened about the idea that they might not be prepared? I'm not trying to scare kids. I don't want to scare kids. But it's valuable to kind of see where you stand emotionally. I would never force a kid who was not ready. And what I mean by ready, again, confident, prepared. Just because, like, maybe they really, really want to do the showcase. I'm like, well, let's think about this. Like, I'll give them a couple of lines and say, what's your next line? And if they don't know, I'm like, are you ready to do this? I've had kids surprise me. I've had kids say, I will be ready tomorrow. And they walk in and they're ready. And I think, as we discussed in the last Videocast, I've had a kid where we've had the conversation and she thanked me afterwards for helping her kind of see that maybe she didn't have, you know, her grasp around this role as best as she would have wanted for herself. But it's a tough judgment call. You know, I don't prefer to tell kids that you can't participate. I'd rather them have that broader perspective and really analyze and assess their own needs and try to visualize and imagine where they want to be and look at their life literally. What hours do I have to give to that? And am I going to be better off maybe just doing backstage work where I only have to commit to the tech week if we can do that? If we're talking, you know, long term, we can't do long term, maybe we can just do that week. Or maybe I can come in on these couple of days that we're working on props and costumes. Or maybe I can come in and help work on the programs and help design posters. Or maybe, you know, I can come in and dress really nice and represent the club as front of house on performance night as an usher and as almost like managerial role type of thing. So even if a student is not necessarily able to join us in the long haul on stage or as a primary big role backstage particularly, there's options there. You know, we have a little saying, the stage door is always open, you know. I don't want to turn kids away. That is not the foundation of what this experience is about. So we try and find that wiggle room so that they are meeting their responsibilities, not sacrificing others that maybe they need to balance too, you know. But that they also know that the door is always open and that I'm here and that we're here and they're not kicked out of club because of their life circumstances. I will say, though, if a student decides that they need to step down, I'm pretty firm about having the conversation. I don't want kids to just stop showing up. That's a life skill. That's a life lesson. You know, if at the age that they're at, I can tell them, come to me, let's have the conversation. I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to make you feel guilty. I'm not going to make you feel like you're quitting, that you're a quitter. You know, you're analyzing a circumstance and making sometimes a really unhappy decision about this. I want them to know that they can make that decision in a compassionate arena, if you will. You know what I mean? And to practice for a future. You can't just leave a job. You can't just leave a project. It's not responsible. It's not professional. It's not mature. And this gives them, again, like that playing field to kind of try out these things and realize, oh, it's not so scary to have this face-to-face conversation. In fact, I feel better about my decision now because everybody understands the circumstances. So,
Well, the circumstances that you outlined as examples of being prepared.
Yeah.
If we're thinking about the younger kids now, as you said, who have never done this before, would you, for example, have a sheet or two that breaks down, what is prepared, even though we know there's all kinds of individual variation,
right.
but the things that, the through line, if you will, that would be the same for everyone, almost like a checklist.
Yeah.
Are you off book? Is it this? Do you have this by this time? This, but almost like so they could do their own analysis.
That's an excellent idea. I haven't formalized that, but that's excellent. Yeah.
So that and I'm thinking, as Allie was saying, it's not making it a shaming kind of situation, but really an analytical one.
Yeah.
Really. Let me think. And even kinds of questions that would lead them to conclude where, for them personally, they would like to be. Maybe there's a way to phrase that, and they can think about it, and then they have information here to grapple with and analyze and make a decision of some sort. And you outlined several options actually that could be taken. But I know personally, I was excited to ask Allie about this because I did wonder, how do you know when you're prepared? What does that mean, really? I might think I am, but in fact not be. So how would you help guide the kids so that that's something that they can assess and they have the tools? So
yeah, I think providing them with something like you've described would be excellent. Actually, I haven't formally done anything like that. It's more in conversation and deadlines and showing up and are you ready, that kind of a thing. But yeah, maybe for those younger kids. And I do have some kids that I would say are a little more immature, not in a negative way. They're just a little bit more green than maybe I've had in previous years. I have more kids, you're going to get more different types of personalities. So that's a strong thing to introduce. I'll probably be considering that, which is great.
It's interesting. And thinking about how... well, that might be coming up later. I'm going to save it because I think I'm going to blow my own surprise with the question. Hopefully, I'll remember to come back. But as you may recall from our last videocast, Allie was really resigning herself to the likelihood that she would have to use Mondays as that second day a week meeting for the drama club. However, as she found out, like with Fridays, Mondays are days that only some of the kids can attend. And another complication that surfaced is the fact that several club members also play what are called modified sports and are on the modified sports teams, which have their own practices and games that take up a pretty substantial amount of time and therefore limit their availability for the additional meetings. So knowing this, now, how did you respond?
I think I actually did pretend to cry, like in club. I was like, why aren't you available? But it's okay. We're very candid with each other. I did what I took next steps. I said we can sign up during that extra 20 minutes at the end of the day that we have. I put up a sign-up sheet, all of this. And I will work with one group at a time, which we've sort of talked about how it's a little tough being spread thin, so I could focus right then or just with that group. When you can get a lot of things done in a short amount of time when you're only doing that one thing.
Yeah.
I had a lot of the sports kids sort of tell me that, at least representing those that might have been there, representing their groups, that yes, we're working on it. Yes, we have our docs that we're doing online together, or we're continually talking about it or whatever. I also want to get schedules of the various sports. So if there's any vital meetings that we do need to have, maybe because not that kids should be missing practices and whatnot. But there's some practices that maybe if you need to be somewhere because you have a show coming up, we can have some wiggle room there. So I can contact the coaches, I can find out when games are, and maybe see what I can do about working around some of these things. Because, it's not like a mandatory experience that they're doing with me, and neither is the sport, so it is a balance. So each can kind of give a little bit, you know what I mean? And that actually is what sort of led me to the 5 o'clock scenario. I typically have had 2 meetings a week, so I don't have to have these longer rehearsals, but in anticipation, knowing what I know, I was like, all right, well, if we can get us all together, we're gonna pull a long haul once a week instead of these shorter meetings twice a week. And we'll see what happens. I'm really hoping that that's positive and successful and pays off, because it is. I feel like for a club, I mean, that's asking a lot, I think, at the moment. I think moving forward, when we're more into May, not such a surprise. But April, I've been for the last few years, and where I've had kids involved, now for some at their 3rd year, it's been a little bit, drama today for a little while, not like, okay, drama all evening. So it's just a little bit different, and I'm really hoping it pays off. So we're gonna see about that. So yeah.
Okay, we'll keep you posted how that goes, and fortunately, next step for this particular meeting finally was the playwriting section, and it really appeared that some of the kids aren't totally clear about the role of the groups in the playwriting process. And I think this is what I was also thinking of when we were just talking about how do you know when you're ready, what does a preparation look like? For the kids who've never done it before, what I think the playwriting process really, how do they come to understand what it's comprised of, so that they know that these elements are part of the deal? Because it sure sounded like, from what you said, Allie, that they seemed a little fuzzy about it. So how did you clarify for them?
Yeah, it is weird. They seemed a little less clear this year, and maybe again it's because we have more younger kids. Maybe again we have some more green kids than maybe in the past. But I explained that every group is writing their scene, and they're creating characters, and that all those characters will be filled by ensemble members. We are not limited by the number of people that happen to be writing with you. Write as if you have an entire slew of people that can fill unlimited bodies, and then we'll pull it back as we need to, based on how many people are in the ensemble after this little time that we've discussed of maybe some people needing to step down. But the idea is that those lead writers typically become the directors. All of the ensemble will start to come together, blending and fulfilling roles in different scenes throughout the whole entirety of the showcase. So if someone has only worked on one scene, only been writing on one scene, sees themselves as the star as one scene, that person will very likely be in a couple other scenes in potentially smaller roles, or another potentially big role, depending on their availability and casting, which is led by the students and very much guided by me. Which we'll get into. We're not in that part of the process yet, and it always is a little different every year, so I honestly don't know what it's going to be like. Hoping for good things. So yeah, eventually we cast the scenes with all the ensemble members, and I try to always have at least one full cast experience, one sort of scene that involves everybody, because I just think that's super important. I don't want things to be kind of taking their little zones and be like, well, I'm in the scene, and this is my scene, and my scene, or our scene. No, like, we're all everybody. Everybody's all together. You may not be in this one, but everybody's in this one. And that builds the camaraderie again. But I did have to remind them to be careful, again, with casting.
Right.
Making sure if you're definitely have your heart set on somebody or you're writing for a particular person, that person is available to fulfill that role. Because if they're not, and maybe they're the only kid because they can do a trick, and you're like, that trick's awesome, let's write that in. But like then the kid isn't available, well, what are we going to do now? So you do have to have, we may not have things finalized, but you have to have some of that key information if you're planning on writing for specific people. Or with specific things in mind. You kind of need to have the understanding and confirmation that it's going to carry through to the end. So,
well, finally, the groups, hopefully perhaps with a little more clarity at this point, began to work once again on their respective ideas. So, Allie, if you could summarize for us the groups, at least the groups that we have at the moment, and where they are in their process.
Sure.
That would be great.
We'll start with Hunger Games. Very exciting. We are always evaluating that quality-quantity ratio with their scenes. Interesting dynamic that occurred. They have started to cast, at least amongst those girls and people whom they know are definitely in it for the long haul. And they use like a little app that is like a random picker kind of a thing. You put in names, you press a button, it spins, and boom, names pop up. It's totally random. Well, not everybody was happy. They were mature in understanding that that's just the way that it shook out, but they weren't entirely happy. And I did end up speaking to one of the girls who was fundamental as a writer as well, and had a lot of plot line that she helped to drive, and very mature, but you can't help that like her little heart was broken, and she was like, I don't want to seem selfish, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to upset anybody. I go, well, it's one thing to like be a brat about it and just say, I want this and I'm taking this. It's another thing to try and figure out what it is that you want, create a pathway for yourself, offer it to the group, and don't deny yourself the right to ask what you would like, to ask for what you would like, especially because you have never demonstrated selfish behavior with them or anything like that. So if anything, they can give you the benefit of the doubt to listen, but it's also how you phrase what you say. So we talked about ways to construct language to ask what you want without demanding it, without putting anybody else down in the process. And she sweetened the deal with a really cool plot line that she kind of constructed to create a new element for the role that she was given that brings her what she feels to be a little bit more fulfilled in the construction and creation of that role. So I was super proud of her. They did all come to an agreement. They've adopted this new plot element, which won't take things into too many rabbit holes if they keep it clean. And they should. I have faith in them. They've actually been really diligent in checking in with me, sending me, their latest copy. Like all of that kind of stuff has been really good. So I've sort of been able to keep tabs. And more on that interpersonal level, I was really pleased to see how that group solved this creative issue, but also solved, a potential, a cloud that would have hung between all of them, but silently, because she would never have said anything. And it's important that she honors what she's feeling and learns how to ask for what she needs, in a way that, of course, is going to be diplomatic and friendly and not bratty and all of those things.
But what you just described immediately what came in my mind is this is a crucial life lesson.
Yeah, it is. Or else you're a doormat. Like, if you don't ask what you want, you're either a doormat or a brat. Like, you don't want to be either of those things. You want to...
Well, particularly in the professional realm and in the corporate world. And, of course, this leads us into, much bigger picture discussions, especially for women, about being able to assert leaning in
needs, without threatening anybody, that kind of a...
it's really it's a hot topic. It's a difficult one to navigate, even for experienced, bright, accomplished adults.
Definitely.
So how wonderful it feels, in my mind, that you're helping these kids learn some rudimentary skills in this context that they can undoubtedly take with them moving forward.
Yeah, and it was very monitored. She's like, okay, so da-da-da. Like, it was very, like, I helped her. I didn't construct her language, but I also just didn't say, like, go tell them what you want, and, like, off we went. Like, she wanted me to know where her head was at and where the others were at. So I'm just glad that it resolved positively, and that they have this new exciting element to include that would not have been discovered otherwise. So it's cool.
Super.
What's next? Okay, the game show girls. They had to leave early again. Whew. But they are making headway. They are making headway. We actually did make an appointment to meet the next day. We were able to meet. It's productive. It's viable. I think it's going to be great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing where they take it. It's a team of 3 writers, and they're excited to see how it's going to grow once more other people get involved with the construction of it. And I think some of their characterizations are going to be really silly and fun and physical, and a lot of there's like robots and stuff involved. Like, it's going to be good. It's going to be cute. It's going to be I can already picture their cute, like, cardboard costumes they're going to make. That's going to be a good one, I think. And I hope, it's cute, straightforward, like, to the point. That's what we like too. Let's see. Dead memes. If we remember dead memes, some younger boys, and I had to toss in, I tried on a lot of different shoes to help bring this somewhere. I did put a veteran with a lot of scene writing experience. I know that this person just enjoys to just write creatively on her own, just for fun, and she has a lot of imagination. I put her with this group, not a lot of progress.
Oh.
Yeah, so I might have to step in myself or put in high school mentors to kind of really structure and guide their process. They're getting pretty stuck, so that's a little bit tricky.
Can I ask you, though, thinking about this group, perhaps as representative of groups in general, what do you look for that tells you, you know what, it's time for me to intervene, as opposed to allowing the kids to wrestle with the process on their own? At what point does that dynamic shift, or are there specific things that you look for that kind of trigger in your mind, okay, now it's time for me?
Yeah. It's pretty organic and different for every group, obviously. In general, it's if the wheels are spinning, if we're repeating ideas again and again, but without adding anything to it. If it's just saying something they think is funny and being like, yeah, we're going to use that. Oh, it'd be so great if we could just do this, but then, like, not doing it, not including it, not trying it on, if you will, not plugging it in and seeing if the puzzle pieces continue to grow to make something whole and complete. And honestly, sometimes it comes down to behavior, that it's not any malintention on their part, but maybe they're just super unfocused, super off task. Like, again, we're talking about memes here, so, like, that's a rabbit hole. Like, just the concept of them, like, they'll talk about this one, and then we'll look at that one, then we'll look at this one, and then now they're just spending 20 minutes just looking at memes. I'm like, no, get focused. Which ones did you choose? Let's look at those. What can we spin off with those? What's some story we can give those? We're not just continuing to add to a list of 20 different memes that you have been talking about for 20 minutes. So that is, if I hear that going on, sometimes I'll send, like, if I have a mentor with me, I'll just check in, like, go over, eavesdrop a little, basically. What are they talking about? Because so those are basically when I definitely need to step in. And even if they are on task, but their arc is going nowhere, and they're just stumped, or they're only working on, like, developing a character and not continuing arc, then I need to step in too, because I have to get an arc. You have to have an arc. You need the arc. Then everything is structured off of that. You know what I mean? If you don't know where you're going, because I too feel like as a character, creating a character, you could start in a lot of different places when you build a scene, But really, your characters are born in rehearsal. You know, they get little, like, the seed is planted when you write the scene. But I think until someone is playing with this character and working with this character, that's really when it becomes defined. So we don't even necessarily need to spend a ton of time in this playwriting stage, at least with this level that we're working with, this age group, this type of structure, until we get into more of our rehearsal characterization time frame. We don't have time to figure out what they're going to wear. You know what I mean? At that moment. It's valid, just not yet, you know.
Got it.
Yeah. Do we have more scenes?
We have the audition
We
chorus
do.
line.
The chorus line goes, everything's under control.
Whoa!
Yay!
Something's working.
Good. Nice short note on that one. Everything's under control. I've touched base with them. I'm looking forward to our preview meeting when we kind of see where everybody's at. So I'm sure there's going to be some material actually constructed that I'll be able to see on the stage, which is fantastic. Entire script might not be written yet, but I believe their arc is complete. I believe they know where they're headed, where they've been. Their characters are fleshing out. And I have a strong feeling they're going to be able to be in rehearsal very soon, which is great, because we are going to need to devote a lot of time to the Hunger Games, which is going to be full cast. So if I can kind of like have things kind of tidied up before really having to dig my heels into this gigantic thing that will be what I believe will be the Hunger Games, and then we always go back and dip the toe and dedicate time here and there to these other scenes. But if we have these smaller things kind of put to bed, then we can always come back to them with a lot more ease. Then where do we leave off? Oh, we didn't even finish blocking that yet? No, like that's not great. We want to be able to at least have something that we can jump back into when it comes time to jump back and forth between the rehearsals of the various scenes.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Anything else? Oh,
yeah,
cringe comedy. The boys, they were all playing sports. All of them. I think they were all in sports, yeah. So, a couple of them came to me to talk to me in person, which was great. Veterans, though, so I told them the deal, you know, what I had explained earlier. If you think you can do it, that's great. Just stay in communication with me. Try and make as many meetings as you can. We'll be extending our meeting time. Come after sports if you can, even if it's just for a little while, so we know what's happening. You can stay involved. And it's kind of at their own judgment if they're going to do that. And we'll have many check-ins along the way to see if they're going to remain as, you know, involved as they hope to be.
Exactly.
It's tough when you hit that modified sports time frame. You know, you have these sixth graders who are not eligible. It's just an age thing. They're not eligible. Modified is for the upper middle school grades. They're like 100,000%, you know, and then it's actually more of a shock to them than it is to me when they're like, I have track. It's like, okay, that's okay. Like, you also know what you're doing, though. You also know how to do this. So we'll keep talking. You're not out yet. You know what I mean? It's really more the kids that have a ton of stuff going on. They have dance 3 nights a week. They have religious education. They have all their homework, you know, very high-achieving kids a lot of the time, too. They're very booked in a lot of ways, because it's not just that they're academically high achieving. They like do a lot of different things and want to do it all well. So that's when you have to assess that balance of like, how am I doing here with trying to do everything in my life as to a highest level as I hope to. And then, you know, those are the tougher conversations, unfortunately. But we'll make it work. I think already I have a couple of girls who are avid dancers, very strong, very avid dancers, and I'm sure they're gonna be amazing ushers. You know what I mean? Which is great, you know. And we had great email back and forth. You know, we just didn't get the chance to talk in person, but they very responsibly reached out. I contacted back, giving them options. They emailed me saying thank you so much, blah blah blah, like sad face, like all this kind of stuff. Cute, but yeah. So anyway, back to the scenes. We have that Adelaide Matilda situation. That's out. That's gone. We're not doing that. And I think that's really good. Talk about landing a plane. Like that plane, that plane circled for running out of gas. Like it was going to crash.
Great analogy.
Yes. So the girl who is interested in being Matilda, wanting to live out that dream role, might very well still do just a solo song, dress up, get out there and do a solo, which is super cute. And again, if she feels confident and prepared, we can make that happen. The issue with them, as we sort of have been discussing, it was just really difficult to facilitate like clear, focused communication between the two of them. And they've been spending a lot of time together spinning their wheels. So which is not bad. Like they're friendly and all of this, and they are. I'm going to separate them, not of either fault of one or the other, just so they can get now a different experience. What is it like when things are really functioning? I want to be, I want to put them with groups to kind of be absorbed into, to get a different experience, to feel what those successes feel like when you are making headway. And that actually could promote them just in general, just watching these other kids work and oh, that's how you do it. You know what I mean? And we deal with emotions when we have that kind of conversation when so they decide they're going to like not do something anymore. So we definitely did some processing. We definitely recognized some of those feelings. Not all of them were positive. No one was crushed. I would say it was a lot more of a fear of feeling like they were quitting or losing something. And also like they were going to maybe potentially let each other down a little bit. But we talked it out. We processed those feelings, and we talked too about attachment to the ideas at this point. There's a lot of enthusiasm for, we could do this, and then I'm going to play this part, and I'll be great. It's like, you probably would be, but there are like 20 other people. And, the ideas that we're talking about, maybe it's great for a full cast discussion, that kind of a thing. With the younger kids and with these girls, I kind of found myself helping them navigate some of those feelings, which was interesting. And through that discussion, though, we did kind of come up with a strong potential opening, which sort of plays on the ideas of the process that Drama Club sort of embodies. And which is cool, which is really great. It even could potentially include some of those elements that I really enjoyed from the Choose Your Own Adventure, where we have the audience decide some technical elements, showing off some of their stagecraft knowledge. But this is where we had to pause the conversation. They got very excited, saying all the things that they hoped they could do and that they would do, and they'd be so great when they do it. And I'm like, okay, but now, because we have sort of pushed this into full cast territory, we can't make any more decisions without everybody, in my opinion, because especially if it's the opening, it's kind of a big deal. If we are creating this as a full cast endeavor, I want it to be a full cast creation, as I've done in the past with something similar. This nugget forms, but then this is something for full group development, and they understood that. So I had to kind of have them press pause on the expectation, I guess, and just be proud for the moment that they came up with something that they can then propose. Yes. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where we're at with that.
That's interesting. I was just thinking, if the emphasis is on, I'll call it pride of proposal, pride of creating an idea that can be proposed, and that's where that sense of self-confidence comes from, and that it's more, I wonder if the message can be, it's more important to be focused there than it is on what happens after the proposal. Definitely. It's the fact that, hey, I mean, look what you have generated creatively. This is fabulous. That in and of itself right there is fabulous, because whether or not it is able to, you're able to move forward with it depends on so many variables that aren't even in your control. So it's just, I wonder if the focus in terms of self-esteem can really be more on the generating and the genesis of creative ideas, which they can control because that's coming from them, and they can feel good about that and really understand that the rest of it is a function of the process.
Not, and you have to kind of surrender to it.
And surrender to the process, not because there's anything wrong with them or they're not good enough or not at all. So, I wonder if that's a message that you ultimately attempt to convey. But in my mind, I was sort of thinking, that's kind of a good separating, area. Pride in proposing.
Yeah. At the moment, that's what they have, and I am proud of them. I'm proud of them. They've been through the ringer. these two girls. I'm like, you're still trying to work together. Wow. And it has something to do with their interpersonal relationship. They're friendly. But just they're like so determined on making something happen. And I think that's great. I do. I think that's great.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing the next steps on that for sure.
Yeah.
So between this March 27th meeting and the extra meeting on April 1st, Allie sent out a parent email.
I did, finally.
Yay, finally got it ready and hit send. Outlining extended time and tech rehearsal dates. And she indicated that starting April 10th, as you now know, Wednesday meetings will run from 3 to 5. And that in April, Allie will be available for conferences that kids sign up for, specifically on Mondays and Fridays. And then in May, the Mondays and the Fridays will then become formal meeting/rehearsal.
Some
days.
of them.
Some of them.
A couple.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, there's, I think, 2 of each or something like that. I tried to kind of scatter it. Again, it's a club. I want it to be a positive experience, not a stressful one. There are stresses involved regardless. So I don't want to just be that, person being like, your kid's supposed to be here, your kid's supposed to be here. I try to make it reasonable because I know it's hard. It's really hard to balance all of these things as a parent. So
it is. And yet you still, I think in the email, said what you needed to say with regard, actually a facsimile of what Allie shared with the students, which is that this is the time that the kids need to really assess their ability to commit the time that's necessary for them to be prepared. Whatever they figure out that looks like, I need to do this to be prepared. Do I have the time to do that?
Yeah. And certain dates are listed as mandatory, like these you have to be at. So that helps some parents make a decision sometimes, much to the chagrin of some of the kids. But there are some hard outlines that parents can go on to help them make that decision. So
exactly. Now, I know also, Allie, when we were talking, that you were a little concerned about how the parents would receive the information that there is this additional rehearsal time commitment in the context of what you just described, these very, very busy lives. But it actually went well?
I think so. So far, so good. No complaints,
right?
Which is great. It's really all I can hope for right now. Sometimes nothing is also a little scary. It's like, did they read it? Do they know? I don't know. But I did get one email, which was really lovely, from a parent who said they've spoken with their son. He's on board. He's there for the long haul. Thank you so much for what you're doing, which is always lovely.
Wow.
And really affirmed his commitment, and also said, please let us know if you need help with anything down the line. And I was like, okay, this is fantastic.
Yeah,
this is
getting better and
better. Perfect. So yeah, those are the emails you want to have. Those are the emails that you want to see. It reminds you that you're not crazy for asking all of these things from these families, to give them these experiences, but also knowing that the support is there is really comforting for me personally. So helps me feel a little better about moving forward.
Absolutely. But interestingly, speaking of all of the extra time needed to be put in, if if we take a look at the April 1st meeting, the quote-unquote extra meeting, only one club member attended, and she brought with her a friend who was not in the club. And she was really thinking that they would be playing theater games much in the way they do in typical regular club meetings. So it appeared that she didn't really understand the purpose of the extra meeting day, which at this point is to focus exclusively on playwriting. So how did you wind up handling this situation, and then what steps will you take to make sure assuming this is probably not an isolated incident, that maybe others are not so sure, how will you make it clear to the whole group what this extra meeting day is about?
Well, I definitely am going to have to address it. I think with the entire group, I'm just going to reiterate what it's for. Like, I'm available for, specific conferences. Bring as many group members as you have. You must have material, written material of some sort with you that we can look at and we can edit and work through, and whatever the case may be. It's not just... it's not another drama club day. We're not just getting together because we want to hang out, play games, and all of this. I acknowledge when she was there, I acknowledge that she, I commended her commitment. This is fantastic. I did explain that we're there to work on scene creation, because she was like, can you play this game? Can we play that game? And I was like, well, it's just the three of us, which is fine. I actually had them do some mirror while I looked at some other things that I needed to do that related to see what can I do with them. And I did find... my notes of the scene that she did help, that nugget of a potential opening. This is one of those girls, very dedicated to drama club, which is great. It is great, but very dedicated. And I reminded her. I said, okay, well, why don't we played a little bit. That's great. Let's hone it in. Let's talk a little bit. Let's brainstorm what potential things can we propose to the group when we do bring this to the group, because I reminded her we can't go forward with it. We can't decide this is what it's going to be, but let's flesh this out a little bit so we have even more to offer them when that time comes. So she did that. She talked with me and her friend, and they were like, this could be great, and maybe that, and blah blah. I took the notes, on the running doc that we have for that, and so now hopefully she's really ready to hopefully lead that proposal, potentially, which could be really a fun opportunity for her. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I was like, really? I love you. I do. She's wonderful. She really is. But it was a tough Monday. It was a tough Monday. And my heart is I'm never upset, of course, if a student comes to me. It's wonderful. It just means that they love it, or you're doing, you're giving them something that they want to be there for. So, I can't complain about that. And I certainly wouldn't want to deter her or make her feel like she's not making a good decision by showing up. All I'm doing is sort of talking about check in with yourself, make sure you're doing what you need to do. So she's doing what she thought she needed to do. There's no criticism there. It's just about clarity. So I think hopefully we're there now. So,
well, perhaps that's a great way to end the videocast and saying, let's keep an eye on the process with regard to the students' increasing understanding of what the component pieces are, and perhaps, having a bit of a longitudinal perspective and knowing, again, what the individual pieces are and how ultimately they fit together. And perhaps that may help them moving forward in their scene creation process, in the way they feel about what happens to many ideas that don't move forward. And even in understanding the initiatives that you're taking in order to pull off a pretty substantially sized show in a few weeks. So keep watching, keep posted, and we'll also see again how the ideas of these groups begin to take shape, or that really congeal, which stay and which don't.
Yes.
And then
That's coming soon.
See what happens after that in the process. I'm excited to find out. So I hope you are too. And Allie, as always, we thank you for your insights and for, on behalf of the kids, what amazing experience I'm sure is for them. So stay tuned and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Good night.